Well, hello, folks. We're in this week of awesome weather. It's supposed to be in the 70s for 3 or 4 days this week. Uh, and my wife and sister-in-law and mom-in-law are on a trip together this week. So, good time for me to come down and kick some ice. So, I've got probably 4 or 5 days plus of work that I could do if I don't get too darn tired. Anyway, I'll show you what I'm doing. All right, so this is the main living area, and this is the bedroom door coming in to the river bedroom. And this used to be the closet for the river bedroom, and this was an exterior closet where we held, beach stuff, umbrellas and life jackets and crap like that. This was an unconditioned room. However, this wall and the other wall had zero insulation in them, and there's zero insulation behind this. So this used to be an exterior wall to the house. This was a window. The reason I'm tearing apart this right now is because I want to reconnect the water to the to and from the water heater. The water heater is right behind that light switch, and so I need to take this piece of plywood off and this piece of plywood off, and that will expose the pipes coming up and down from the water heater and the washer or dryer. Just a washer supply, which I want to hook up to, because when I cut the supply line underneath the floor out there, that killed the washer as well. So I'm going to be hooking up some flexible hose between that point where I cut it and the washer and the hot water heater, so I can restore those. Since I'm going to be here for almost a week, it would be good to take a shower. Anyway, so I've been demoing this area here, and so this floor already has insulation under it. This is the crawl space. This is the limit of the crawl space that I was insulating. Here's the plumbing that I put in. And so beyond this, I'll be rebuilding virtually the entire floor, going from here all the way to the street side of the house. Because this is original old part of the house, and it was built funky. Whereas this area here was built in 95, so it was built reasonably well. Anyway, that's what I'm doing at the moment. All right, after getting the piece of plywood off, there was insulation in here, just not where the window was. But I was able to run my 1-inch ID tubing through a hole in the wall coming out of the washroom. So cold water has a valve and a T going to the clothes washer. The hot water is not connected because I had to disconnect I had to run the tube to the hot water too. It turns out it was the hot water pipe that had burst, not the supply line. So I had hooked up the supply line, and then it was still leaking. So I had to run this. Unfortunately, running the supply line took like 3 or 4 more feet than it should have. I mean, I only had enough to do what I've got right here, but I've got an extra loop there for the hot, but that wasn't enough to reach over to the washer. So here's where I tapped into the supply line is the far line. The close line is the hot return back to the house. So the hot return I didn't have enough pipe. So instead of running it underneath the floor and coming out that hole like the supply line does, the hot return just comes in here and goes around, and they go into a hole in the wall, and then join with the 3/4 inch copper. So anyway, that'll hold for a while, and I can take a shower. I can do laundry with cold water, better than nothing, and I'm good to go. All right, folks. So first task for today is to build the filler for the I-beam. So sorry for the poor light. This I-beam is actually specified here as a 1438. It's actually a 1054. 54 is the weight in pounds per linear foot, and 10, the W is the how tall it is. So we need to fill in this right hand X part of the beam with wood. However, I'm going to be putting these, instead of being the 2x8s, these are actually going to be the PSLs, which are right here. These are 5 1/4 by 9 1/4. So these are going to be going off in this direction with hangers, hanging on those hangers, attached to this chunk of wood right here. So I drew a profile of the inside of the beam coming in here. This is the inside of the flange, and then it's got a fillet there, flat for about 7 1/4 inches or so, and then another fillet, and then the underside of the top of the flange. And then there's 1/2 inch holes that will bolt this chunk of wood to the webbing of the I-beam. And then I also have to accommodate the 8 bolts that are holding the I-beam. Let me pull up the page here. So this is an I-beam that comes to this main beam, and there's 4 bolts here and 4 bolts here. So the heads of those bolts, here's a bolt and washer combination. So at each joint of the 2 sets of beams, we've got 4 bolts. So I need to bury these heads in this chunk of wood because I'm not going to be able to get at the heads. This chunk of wood is 11 feet 9 inches long, such that we have the 7 inch bolts. These are the 1/2 inch bolts that secure the wood to the I-beam. And so I obviously am going to be bolting the wood into the I-beam with these, but I won't be able to get at this head to hold it while I tighten the nut. So I need to make another piece of wood, and I'm going to make it out of 3/4 inch plywood that will sit against the webbing and retain and keep this head from rotating. So that's what I'm going to do next. So of course this piece of plywood is going to act as my prototype for the big piece of wood that's going to go in here. So basically I'm going to have 1 2x material laying the full 11 plus feet long, and then I'm going to excavate the space for these pieces of plywood. And that'll form the first layer of 2x, and then I'll have 2 more layers of 2x with a 1/2 inch in between to give me my 5-inch width here. So I'll take a little more off. Looks like I need to take mostly off of the 45 degrees round of the round there. These in, and we should be good. I put them up and traced the holes from the other side. Of course, I'd labeled each one individually, so I can put them in the same place. Now I'm going to drill the holes. I'll put the bolts in with the holes just to make sure that the bolts are in the pattern and that they fit in the I-beam, and also in the flanges of the other I-beam, the other 2 I-beams, to confirm that all of these holes are in the right location. After that, I'll trace around the head, and I'll use a bandsaw to cut out a head-shaped hexagonal hole so that the bolt has a little bit of play, but not much. And then I'll cut out this face a little bit. I'll relieve a little bit to allow for the washer, and then I'd be ready to then make the piece of wood that covers this, that this sets into, that goes inside the webbing. All right, Houston, we have a problem. So I have secured the nuts and the bolts in a pattern that fits the flanges of the I-beam that mates to this main beam here. And when I say it mates, it barely mates, such that I can get all 4 bolts on simultaneously, but I have to really twist it. So far, that's the compromise I'm at. However, they do go through those 4 holes. But if I come over here and take a look, these guys are not matching up all that great. So, yeah, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make them fit here in the board on the other side, and then when we go put the I-beam in here, if holes don't align, we're just going to file grind them so that they will go over the bolts. That's this whole pattern, and the pattern on the flanges is off enough that I can't find a common position for all 4 bolts that fits both at the same time. So that's a problem. But it's not insurmountable. It's just that actually I think the pattern, well, yeah, I know the pattern on one of the flanges, the pattern is off by 1/8 of an inch. One of the holes is. So we'll just make it work when we get to that point. That'll just be a big pain in the butt. Like, we'll have to fit the I-beam, see that it, mark on there where it doesn't, where we need to trim, then back the I-beam out and tilt it down and let it rest on some structure, and then grind the holes, and then lift it back up and put it back in. The I-beam is not so heavy that I couldn't do that by myself with my shoulder lifting it. Especially depending on where I, put a fulcrum in the middle, or a fulcrum somewhere here with a roller or something like that lets me slide it easily back and forth. But we'll come across that road when we get there. Anyway, time to press on. All right, here's the final iteration for the first one. So we have recesses for the washers. The bolt heads are through holes. So again, there's no wood in between the bolt and the web of the I-beam. This is purely meant to retain the head so that it doesn't rotate when I try to tighten. When I try to tighten the bolts or the nuts on the other side of the webbing when I'm attaching the I-beams going toward the street. Anyway, got to do this one more time. All right, I got the two bolt plates fitted. So now it's time to make the basically a 2x8 that goes across all the holes. You can barely see there's a hole there, and a hole there, and a hole hidden by the flange, just above the flange. So those are the 9 bolt holes that will secure the filler to the I-beam, and that's what the PSL is going to hang on. All right, folks, I got the first bolt plate fit. So this guy goes on here. So this right here is joist that I pulled out of the main living area when the joists were on 2-foot centers, and one end of the joist was against the rotten sill and rim joist. So this is a 2x8, which in this case right here is 7.5 inches, which normally 2x8s are 7.25. This is also a little less than 1 3/4 inch thick. So these holds, I'm looking for the tape measure. Here it is. So if we come down here to the end, it's upside down, but it's more than 1.5 inches. It's more than an inch. It's 1 inch and 11/16. So the fantastic thing about this is that 3 of these put together make 5 inches. So I don't need a 1/2 inch piece of plywood in my sandwich. So here is where the other bolt plate goes, between these marks here. So I'll cut that out tomorrow morning. Yeah, so for this first one, where the bolt plates are, obviously this curve is a great fit inside the I-beam. So I just ripped off a 45 there, and then I added, this is about 1.5 inches, and then I ripped this guy down to the width of these guys. Now the 2 subsequent ones are going to be a little wider because the inside of the flanges tapers just ever so slightly. But yeah, so when I cut the other guy down there, then I'll put everything back up like that, where that is, and this one where those bolts are, and then I can put this board up there and make sure the board fits in place, and then tack with nails through the big board into these plates to fix where they are, and then I'll screw them from the other side later. And then I'll also mark where the holes are so I can begin registering where the bolts go that hold this sandwich together to fill the I-beam. Anyway, this has taken me a lot longer than I thought it would. I started working on this project about 9:30. It's after 5, probably 5:30. As you can tell, it's getting dark. There's a sunset over there. And I'm tired. So I'm going to make some food and chillax. All right, folks, it's in, man. The fill for the beam to hold up the 9 1/4 by 5 1/4 PSLs. So the PSLs are going just to the left. The center line of the PSL here is about a couple inches to the left of the center line of this I-beam here. And then it's clear. It's to the right of about maybe an inch or so from the edge of the I-beam here. So the PSLs are not necessarily centered on the two I-beams that are going toward the street, simply because this load-bearing post is in the center of the house. And the chimney was not necessarily in the center of the house. So that's why the beams coming from where the chimney used to be are going to be off-centered a few inches from the PSLs that are the cantilevered porch. So the other bolts for the I-beams are there, ready to accept the flanges of the I-beams. All right, on to PSLs.